Hey, Ashutosh.
Good morning, good evening, sir. How
Good
are you, sir?
evening, good morning, good afternoon, and so it is all of that. Very nice, very nice. Good. I see that a little bit of shaving has happened.
That's the personal conflict that's been resolved.
That one personal conflict that has been resolved. Super awesome, super awesome, fantastic. So great, Ashutosh. So let's it's 6 o'clock on the dot. So let us
Uh-huh.
kick start. So
Okay.
very good evening to everyone. This is a startup story session which we're doing along with Ashutosh. My name is Vijetha. I'm a part of the Thai Bangalore team. And thank you, of course, to the Vidphone team for giving us the platform, giving us all this support. And today is a special episode and something that will be, unfortunately, I would say, this Ashutosh, that keeps happening all the time, right? The conflict
Yes.
that happens and the resolution that we have to be working on as whether it's as a co-founder, as a team player, with your customers, etc. So, without further delay, Ashutosh, over to you. What can we expect today in terms of it's about conflict resolution and everything legal. So
Mhm.
let's go for it.
Thank you, Vijeta, and thank you again, Vidphone, for this platform. Right. I think so. Just to start off, I've seen two different types of conflicts, and it's more like around the maybe the cultural things as well. Like the conflicts that happen in US startups versus what happens here, right? So as we were discussing, because we are doing the startup story, so we thought that it's a good focus to have, and then good to start with talking about the conflicts as well, right? And I've just prepared like a small slide which I'll share, right? I'll share my entire screen. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, I mean, just to define conflict, right? I mean, when we talk about conflict, it's not a conflict that just happens between two people, right? When we are talking about conflicts, it could be between co-founders, right? And that has a very huge impact because it's an impact to the company itself. It could happen at any stage. It could happen at the beginning stage. It could happen at a later stage, and it could be for a variety of reasons. So, how do we handle that? And likewise, if you have a conflict between employees or between the management and the employees, once you have like a company with more than 10 or 15 employees, this is very common to have that, right. And then it's also important to address employee grievances in the right form and fashion. And similarly, the other major important one is the conflict that can happen with uh, the customers, and customers being the ones who are paying you, whether we are talking about B2B and B2C. It's the same story, right? When somebody is giving a bad review to the app, or somebody from a business side is talking something about the app not working, and then the features not being right. So how do you handle that? So that's the the one that we talk with the customers. And finally, there are conflicts that can happen with the board or with the investors. So because and they have vested in interest in the company, right? Because of some reasons, whether they are on the advisory board, or whether they have put in their money and their time. So given that, how do we address the conflicts? So without talking way too much, I'll just talk with the first slide, and which talks about the conflicts that happen with your co-founders. And I mean, I thought a lot about it, talking about whether we should segregate it, if the conflict happens when the company has just started versus the conflict happens when it has grown into a certain form and fashion. So I thought that the best way to address it would be to generalize it a little, and the best way to, in my mind, especially between two co-founders, the best way to address a conflict is to embrace it. Right? It's very important to understand each other's point of view,
Correct, correct.
and the two co-founders could be from a technical background, they could be from a different background, right? Doesn't matter. The thing is that two people who have come together, who have thought of like a product and an idea, right? Whatever the idea could be. So it's important to understand each other's point of view, right? And what I always do, and then we talk about it, is pick a pen and paper, and then once you've understood each other's point of view, just create a plan of action. Maybe, it doesn't hurt to say that let's try this out. Let's try your idea for the next 2 months, or let's try your idea for the next week and 2 weeks and see how it works out. Right. So that's the address of the conflict. Right? So instead of, saying, no, you're wrong, it's better to, talk about it, write it down and give it a shot. I mean, the addressing part is just giving it a shot. It builds trust because, you're understanding the other person's point of view. It also, gives the leverage to you to get the same thing back as a gratitude when, when you put a point of view forward and then they understand that point of view. Of course, things can go south, right? So there could be some co-founders which are not like, as willing and as understanding. So that's where, we have to establish the boundaries. Because whether we are, doing the same task, whether we're doing, one person is doing sales, one is doing, technology, the other is doing all the CEO related stuff. It's very helpful to understand boundaries, especially with people who are little more adamant and, fixed to their point that this is the only way things have to work, right? So with that in mind, it's best to, write it down that this is the assignment, this is what you have to do, this is what we have to do, and also have the agreement that we have to move on. Whether, the worst thing that could happen to a company is when people hold internal grudges. They don't speak about it, they're not talking about it in an open forum. And that's when, the company, it's like the pillar of the company, right? So you're kind of breaking the pillar by digging it, piece by piece. So it doesn't really help. So it's best to not put blame on anyone and just agree to move on. Not just linger over it. It doesn't really help. And this is, I found this out a few months back, but about 43% of the entrepreneurs, they split out because they have internal arguments, and technically no resolution to those arguments, right? And if it gets to a point where, your company is to a very big stage, it has like running customers, it doesn't make sense to break the company right now, it's best to get professional help. There is no harm in doing that. The professional help could be, coaches. There's like a lot of startup coaches which help, getting this, reaching out to the mentors and the advisors that are there in the company to just get that help, or sometimes maybe even legal help, right? It's not wrong to keep your options open in terms of like the legal understanding of it. I'm not saying, fight a legal battle, but at least in terms of understanding that this is the scope of my point of view, and that's where it stays. So from that point of view, just, getting a legal and advisory help is important. Okay. Now, when we are talking about, like with employees, and this is one advice I give to every company that I meet, which are in the early stages, is do your research, spend some money on good HR policies. And that's very, very important. I've seen so many startups not having an HR policy. I mean, to an extent, a lot of companies have some legal documents around like how agreements are made, NDAs are signed, and MOUs and all that. But 90% of the companies that I work with, my personal experience, is that they don't have HR policies. And this is so critical, so important. There's so many grounds to cover when it comes to HR policies. One is, related to the salary and stuff. The other is related to the behavior. And the third, and equally important, is like, the dressing up, the attire, the mannerism, the behavior, the speaking, and all that. And finally, one clause that is very less discussed is the harassment part, right? So having a good HR policy is very important before you hire the first person, right? I mean, it's like no-brainer, right? That much has to be invested in, right? Second part to that, and as part of the HR policies, is grievance policies. A lot of employees might not be, ready to discuss something in the open forum. So having a grievance policy, like an open door access or open door policy or something like that, where you're letting, your employee come towards you and then talk to you directly is very, very important. And that's why the grievance policies helps a lot. So what happens if an employee has a grievance? Right? We have talked about employees having conflicts. Two employees can have conflicts. The employee can have a conflict with the management, or there could be some other reason why they are not very happy. So the best thing to do that is, if there the conflict is between two employees or it's between the management, it's best to let the employee describe that conflict. It's again, I mean, all conflict resolution strategies always start with trust. There are two routes to go. Either you avoid it altogether, which is very bad, or you build that trust. And to build that trust, it's always good to listen to the other person. So this is where you let the employee discuss and talk to you. And this happened very recently in our organization, where two people fought, and I was not very aware because I was at a client location when I came back. So I heard one side, and obviously makes you go some either ways, because you're just listening to one point of view. So at that point, I just said, I need to talk to the other person as well, and that is very important. You can't just listen to one person and then make a decision. It has to be fully understood, non-biased decision. So so that's what we do. We speak to everyone who is involved. And then the second thing is, you reach out and you say that, what would be the ideal solution here. Yes, you can have an ideal solution in mind, but again, it's about making that trust, bridging that gap, having that loyalty settled, right? So that's where it's important to include them in your decision making process, and then talk about the brainstorming solution. And who knows, sometimes employees do have like really good solutions, so why not include them into this, right? Then finally, the third part is always the action item. The action item is summarizing whatever the solutions available, and then agreeing on the steps that are to be taken for those action items. In most cases, this should resolve the issue. But the most important is, unless it's like a bad apple, uh, in most cases, if you talk to the employees, both employees have a very unbiased decision towards it, it will resolve the issue, right? So that's where we are with the employees. With customers, um, so this is very if you go to Google Play Store, and this bothers me a lot, is most of the time you'll see one or two things. One, either the if somebody has left a review, either the response to that review will be very rude, that this is the way it is, deal with it. Or it would be just, we hear you, and then nothing happens. Both are wrong, right? Or the first one is obvious, right? So I mean, not implying that the customer is always right, but it should always be implied that you let the customer speak out, right? The second one is wrong because there is no action associated with it. And this happened to me very recently. So we talk about that we have explained the problem, and somebody says, yeah, we hear you out, but then nothing happens, right? So the first thing is, when we are talking to a customer, and whether it's B2B, B2C, it applies in both cases. Every individual customer, whether it's a single customer in a B2C, or it's an organization, and then one team that you're dealing with in the organization, all of them are important. Their point of view is also important to hear it out, right? So let them explain the problem as deeply possible. And then first thing is that the assurance that we have understood the problem. The second thing is, uh, point by point, just read it out, saying, as I understand, this is what you're facing, in a very, very neutral tone. At any point of time, no matter how aggressive they are, no matter how rude they are, it doesn't help if you lose your tone, because then the conflict becomes a quarrel. So the most important thing is that while we are talking to them, reiterate the points. assure them that you have understood this, reiterate that, okay, this is what I've understood from your point, I'm writing it down, right? But even if you have an answer, it doesn't always help to give an answer immediately. It could be because that answer could be in haste. It could be the right answer, or it could be something that is not fully understood. So writing down each and every point and then thinking about it, it doesn't really harm if you tell them that, you know what, I've understood your points. Can I come back to you in a day or so when I discuss it with my team? There is no harm in saying that. Even if they say that, why can't you give me an answer now? You can say them that, you can tell them that, I understand that, but I just want to discuss this with my team, and then you come back to them. But make sure that you don't lie about it. Make sure that we have an answer the next day. If we give a 24-hour deadline, then before 24 hours, the answer or the email or the solution should go out, or another set of meetings should happen. Right? And that's where you, for each of the points that we have written down in terms of like what the customer has complained about and what the customer has problems with, for each of those points, we have like a resolution, or whether we have, a point where we are saying that this is what we understood and this is what we have in the system. And this, again, one is the trust building. The second is it increases the longevity of the relationship, because there is a very healthy communication between two parties. When we acquire a customer, the first time the customer is a business deal. Yeah, let's not think about it twice, right? Somebody is paying you money and you're giving them services. It's a business deal. But how do you make that customer a repeat customer? That can only happen through services. Whether we are providing services through our app, which is B2C, or whether we are providing services through B2B. And the best way to provide service is a very healthy communication. And the most critical part of that communication comes out when there is a conflict, when the customer is not happy. And more often than not, the customer won't be happy, right? Because the customer always has one plus demand of what you have supplied, right? So if you supply 10 things, they might want like 12 things, right? And they might not be happy that you have not supplied 12 things, right? So at that point, there are two answers, right? You can immediately tell them, no, this is what we agreed upon, this is what we'll supply, end of story. That doesn't build the relationship. Somewhere in the customer's mind, it will be that, okay, it's a very fixed answer, maybe we don't want to work with them again. Instead of that, if we say that, okay, given the time constraints, this is what we can do, but let's talk about how we can enhance the abilities of the software so that we can get something else. And that just small little gesture of willingness goes a long way in terms of acquiring a customer. This is how you can make your first customer a repeat customer, or you can make them stay with the platform for a longer period of time. So this conflict resolution has a very healthy effect. A proper conflict resolution, rather, has a very healthy relationship on the company. So it's very important on how we maintain our tone, how we maintain how neutral we are in terms of our explanations, and how neutral we are in terms of our approach on dealing with the customers. And finally, when we have like a conflict with the investors or the directors, this, by the way, if you are a limited, private limited company in India, or if you are an LLC in US, there are quite a bit of rules and regulations around it. So when it comes to the conflict resolution with investors or the board of directors, so there is like a pretty well standard set of rules which are out there. But as founders, or as entrepreneurs, our role of responsibilities just doesn't end because we are having this dispute and then there are set ways to resolve it. Because we have to stay with them for a longer period of time. And keeping that in mind, it is very important to also talk to them about that any dispute that happens between the board of directors and the founders, or between investors and the founders, is a risk to the company. If either party walks out, it just deteriorates the state of the company. So, I mean, the investor may or may not, have a problem with that, right? But you, as a founder, have a lot of problem with that fact. So, whenever we are talking to whenever we are talking about a conflict with an investor or director, the only thing that should be in our mind is that this dispute can risk the company, right? And the resolutions of that should be around that. Whether, if we are ready to let that investor walk away, what is the impact of that? That's the first assessment to do, right? And even if, the impact is that the investor walks away and it doesn't really change the company, that doesn't mean that we, have a bad attitude towards it, because the investor community is very small, right? And then the investors talk to each other. Same way with the directors, right? So the board of advisors, the board of directors, that's a very small community, and then they talk to each other. So at any point, having a conflict and letting it go doesn't really help. The best way to handle that is to have like a good communication, and especially if the conflict is between an investor or a board member, or between the entrepreneur and the investor. The thing is, we have to point out the facts which are out there, and that can be done only through good communication. The second part is, as the company grows, there'll be more than one board members. If there are, let's say, three investors, so obviously there's three investors right there. And then, if you have like board members who are like advisors, and you've had advisors, so anyone who's holding an equity becomes a board member, and then board members come with the power that they can make a decision on the company. So setting up a consensus is very important, and a lot of this is written down by the law, right? Both in India and overseas. But understanding those laws and understanding the consequence of the consensus and the benefits of the consensus is very important. And so the board should be set up in such a way that the consensus is neutral all the time. It shouldn't be that one party is able to sway it the other way. And I mean, I cannot stress this enough how much this happens. So the board should not be set up because somebody is giving you money, or somebody is giving you this one tip of advice which is very good. The board should be set up with people who are neutral in all respects. And it's hard to find. I agree that it's not like it's something that can be found very easily, but that's what it is, right? I mean, and that's what we have to do. And even if we find out that there is an opportunity where we are disagreeing with them, that disagreement should not be argumentative. It should be more constructive than that. The the disagreement should be more around how we can find the right solution. Maybe in terms of, let's say, some investor wants to invest in a deal and we are not ready to invest in that deal, correct? And just a very arbitrary case, right? So instead of just saying that no, I don't feel that this is a good deal for us, right? Maybe the better answer is that where we are right now, it doesn't make sense to look at it right now, but maybe 2 months in the future when we have this platform ready, then we can take a look at it. So it's very constructive. It's because it's not a no, but it's also not a yes, right? So you're saying to the investor that you're going to give it a thought, but maybe right now you don't have the bandwidth or the energy to do it. So you'll give it a thought when you have that moment of time, right? So, and it also buys you time, because then the investor maybe in the next board meeting, which is the next quarter, comes back and says, hey, did you think about it, and can we talk about it? And if you're there, then you do that, and if you're not there, then you discuss it again. So the construction, the agreement or the disagreement should be very constructive. At any point of the time, if the tone changes, if the it becomes more argumentative, then it's going to just devolve more and more. It's not going to come out of it in a very suitable way, right? So that's what I had in the slides. But there's one more conflict that I want to talk about, which is a little more closer to me, is the personal conflict, right? And I'm not talking about like you conflict with family or conflict with somebody closer to you. It's the conflict that you have in yourself, right? And this is very important from a point of view of a entrepreneur's journey, right? You'll read we read a lot, like you go to sites, your story, INC, and entrepreneur and startup and all that, right? So there's like fantastic stories. Those guys have like good stories, but when you're starting out, those stories start to pile up on you. Those stories start to feel that, oh my god, whether I'm going to achieve anything out of it, right? And and the answer to that is that it's okay, right? That conflict makes you lonely. Even if you are you're a company with like 5 co-founders, eventually you might feel yourself lonely, right? It might be that the 4 of them are contributing more than you, and then you feel bad, and then all the 5 of you are feeling that you're pouring in money, you're pouring in your time and resources, but nothing is happening. The co-founders may agree to deal with it together, but at any point of time, it's still an individual's journey to go through it, and that conflict is a very hard one to swallow. And the only answer there, and this is from personal experience, is that the only answer there is that you have to move on, right? uh, not thinking about how the days have been, not thinking about how the days are going to be, but you have to live with the fact that tomorrow is a new day and then you start fresh, right? It could be that you crack a huge deal today, but that doesn't change the fact that tomorrow you have to go and then start building on that deal. Or it could be that you lost a major deal today, but that doesn't mean that tomorrow you can't go and you start a new deal. We get so much involved in our success and failures that we forget that tomorrow is a brand new day, and it always will be, right? So this one is a little more closer to me, and it took me a long time, especially when I was starting out, given the network and the things that I had. There were so many early successes, and it just it it just eats you up. You start feeling that you're climbing ladders one and one and one, and then at some point you have to take that break and realize that it doesn't matter, because no matter how much success or failure you have, tomorrow, what you do with the present time, and then what you're going to do with what you have right now, is the most important. And it's just my humble appeal to everyone who's listening, or who may ever listen to this, is that uh, don't let success or failure eat you up. It's best to see what's in front of you and just focus on that. It's good to have goals. I'm not saying that don't worry about like 3 month goal, 6 months goal, 5 year goal, right? But if anybody who has lived through the last 5 years in India with GST, demonetization, and COVID will realize that 5 year goals really don't mean nothing, right? So it's good to have those goals and understand those goals, but the most important goal is the one which is in front of you, which is right now, right? So to meet that goal is very important, and that's all what I had to discuss. We can, Vijetha, if you have any questions, otherwise we'll go into some role
No, no,
playing.
I think you covered everything, and it's almost half an hour into the session. So
Okay.
let's immediately move into the role play. Ashutosh,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
think that's what really is going to be critical and useful.
All right. Okay. So you want to be an angry customer or an angry co-founder?
Not that way. We'll not make it so bad for the thing. But let's imagine, right? See, let's look at this. Two co-founders equally adept at what they're doing, 50-50% in the company, but
Mhm.
they differ on how to take things forward or
Yeah.
how to handle things, right?
Mhm.
Or they may even feel that that one person is putting in more effort and should be compensated more or should get more or whatever it is, right? I mean, these are the common things that happen. I
Yes.
mean, you also have pointed out that more than 40% of the reasons why companies collapse or fail or fall apart is because of the conflict between the co-founders.
Yes. Mhm.
So let's keep that as a learning lesson, not just as a screaming match or something like that. Like, but what can we do to help to resolve the problem? Okay. So
Mhm.
let's imagine that I am going to be the person who's going to kind of try to figure you out. Let's do a reverse role play kind of thing. Okay.
Oh. So you want me to be the bad guy here, huh?
Yeah. Be the bad guy. Up to you. Whatever. Let's understand this. Okay. Let's just understand this.
Mhm.
So you want to kickstart? We can start it. Yeah.
Okay, so I am just to understand beforehand, I am the one who's going to say, look, I need more equity in the company
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all
Yeah, as long as you
right.
can justify it, right?
Yeah,
Okay. And
okay.
see, I will also say that, look, man, the thing is that it's not just in my hands, Ashutosh.
Mm,
I'm just starting the role play. It's not in, you come and you, because I will tell you this also. I'll tell you this, that Ashutosh, that, I mean, I know we are having this conversation about you wanting to get more equity, and maybe you deserve it. But you see, there is a written contract we have got with the investors. The cap table has been sorted out the way it has been sorted out. So
mm.
now to convert things last moment will be very, very difficult, Ashutosh. I would request your understanding of that.
No, but see, I mean, how you understand, please try to understand my point of view also, right? I've been working night and day for this, right? And I've been trying to make this a success, right? And the reward that I'm getting is not that much. When we started out, when we, the cap table was laid out, maybe the expectation was not this much, but you're also seeing what I'm putting. So please understand that point of view, and that's why I'm saying that I should be getting more equity.
All right. So I think Ashutosh, the best way to handle this, I am okay with this. Okay.
Mhm.
But we'll still have to involve the rest of the board, and we'll have to involve the investors who have already given us a term sheet, and we have shared with them the existing, how do we handle that? Like,
Mhm.
you tell me now, if for the sake of a few percentage, what will happen if the entire deal falls through? Then it doesn't make any difference, Ashutosh. So how do we take care of this? I mean, I would like you to dwell upon that also. It's not just about you getting a little bit more or me getting a little bit less, but the company should not suffer, because then that for that 1-2% we stand to lose a lot of money.
No, I totally understand that, and I understand that people have put in money, and then at this point, either us having fight is a hard game. But how can we resolve? So I am also having a conflict. Maybe equity is not the way, but how about raising the money? Like how do we resolve this, right? So because at the end of the day, I need to see some outcome which is like more positive towards me when we are having this discussion.
Okay, fair enough, Ashutosh. I would like to see this in writing from you with the justification, because I have no problem, as I said, but I would definitely like to make sure that the board and our investors are in the loop,
Mm.
and maybe some of the other, I would not say exactly co-founders, but employees whom we're giving ESOPs to, they might also, because I'll have to take something away from someone. I'll give away some of mine to you, but then we need to have a proper consensus. It has to be very institutionalized, and I would suggest that we go around it that way.
Okay. I can give you in writing. I mean, I've been putting in a lot of hours of work, so I can definitely give that in writing, and I can show that to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Ashutosh. Very amicably solved. Okay. Okay, but let's look at this customer conflict.
There's one thing I'd just point out, right? Now,
Ha, ha, ha.
no fault, but I would never say that I'd give up my equity
Ha. Yeah, I know.
because people will latch on to
Yeah,
it.
correct. I know, understood that. I was being nice. I was being
I've
nice.
made I've made that mistake, so I know.
Okay.
Yes.
So now let's understand about angry customer, right? Saying, and maybe I can be that angry customer, and we can kickstart right away. Hi
Mm.
Ashutosh, this is Vijetha here. I think we have met before,
I
and
will. How are
as
you?
and as and yes, I am not too good, Ashutosh, because
Oh,
the very upset with the way things are going on, because we have been
oh,
your customer for a long term. I have been highlighting some of the issues that the team has been facing, and
okay.
now I'm forced to take this call and also let you know that we are extremely upset with the lackadaisical support, the attitude from your team, and surprisingly you have not reverted back to us also, because you have been in a loop. I was just going through the threads, and
Okay.
despite you being in the loop, you are not reverted back to us. Why is that, Ashutosh?
Yeah, I'm so sorry that I was not able to resolve the to get back to you, and I take this as a like a personal failure of mine that I was not able to get back to you. But I would let you know that we did talk internally about the issues that you were having, and we've had like several meetings, and then we have started to work on those issues in particular. Um, Maybe if you can give me like 2 or 3 days of time, I can get back to you point by point on all your all the grievances that you have, and what we have been doing to address them, or if we have not addressed them so far, I can give you a due date on by when we can be addressing it. I am again apologizing to you that I was not able to get back to you, but if you can give me that 1 or 2 days of time, then I can at least send
Yes.
you that
And
email.
Ashutosh, I wanted to be also very clear, and this is some come from the team as well, that we have suffered a loss of face and some business losses as well, which again we have highlighted it. So we also need to understand that how are you going to compensate for us, and that's non-negotiable, because the loss of face, the loss of reputation, the money that we have lost, and because of some of the rumors and stories that have been spreading about the way we have been handling this, has also led to an erosion in our market cap as well. So these are strict no-nos, and I would like that aspect also to be addressed, please.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, that's something that I'll have to discuss with my board, and maybe what we can do is we can have a meeting with the board and you. From my side, as a company, what I can promise you is that if there is this annual maintenance, that we've been providing you for 1 year, maybe we can waive that off for you. But other than that, we can have a discussion with my board, and then if there's something else that we can do, if there's like a note that we can send out to the company, to your company, so that also we can discuss further.
Yes. And this time, Ashutosh, we are saying 2 or 3 days, that is 48 to 72 hours, starting now at 6:30 p.m. And I know it's a weekend,
Mhm.
but you have to make sure that by at least by Monday, end of day, we have some kind of report, some kind of, how we're going to address the gaps. And please, without fail, it should be done. Otherwise, we'll be forced to take some very strong action. I hope you understand
I do understand that, and what I can do is, I mean, given that I understand that it's 72 hours is too much time, and then you're suffering some business losses. If you're okay with that, then every end of day, I can send you one report on where we are. Considering the fact that the third day report would be the final one with the final numbers, but at least you know where we are in terms of the updates. I can send you update every day, so that you are aware that what we are doing is. To really help you solve your problem, if
that.
that's okay with you.
Definitely, and I'll be working on the weekend because this has been a serious blow for us, and I would expect your team to show the same attitude, and we get updates every few hours from you folks. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I do apologize again that it happened. And as an action plan, I will send you those emails, and I'll also set up a call with my board to resolve your other grievances as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
so that's also done. Then what else do you think is do you want to do an employee to employee conflict or a legal conflict? What are the examples of legal conflicts, Ashutosh? I mean, that's something that I want to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, legal conflicts. So there are few types, right? With the employees, it usually doesn't happen because the ESOP rules are very clear in terms of the vesting and the cliff period. So just for people who are starting up, so in terms of when you're giving up an equity, there's always like a cliff period and a vesting period, right? So the cliff is where so let's say if the cliff is 3 years, right? So your equity starts to build up only after 3 years. So that's basically, if you leave before 3 years, you get nothing, right? And then the vesting period is how much equity you get. So let's say if your vesting period is 2 years, and then your equity is 2 years payable every 6 months, right? So, and then your equity is 5%. So after 3 years, which is your cliff, then the first 6 months, if you spend there, so then you get 1/4 of your 5%. And if you stay for 1 year, then you get like half of your 5%, right? So that's how it builds up, right? So first 3 years, you will not get anything. After that, the amount of months you stay, you'll get that much equity, right? So with ESOPs, it's slightly more clearer, and then that the picture is clear. If you have not set up ESOP this way, please do that, right? But when you're talking about like co-founders, it becomes a little more dirty, and that's where the conflicts come to a point where some resolution is required. And even when we are talking about like uh, co-founders, a lot of people, because two friends started the company and something happened, right? So they have like an equal distribution or something like that, right? But thankfully with the MCA, now you have to declare everything, how much equity everyone has, and then what is the percentage. And as we were just doing in this conflict resolution as well, that it was already given to the board, and it was already given, so it's already done and dusted. So if somebody is leaving, they have to pay that part of their equity. So let's say, you and I start a company, you own 60%, I own 40%. And if they're like 1 lakh of shares, right? So you'd put 60,000, I'd put 40,000. So let's say if I decide to leave, I would have to pay up that like 40% of that market capital. Right? So it's quite, in terms of like the legal framework, it's quite well set up. It could happen that there are still challenges that could happen because there is no NDA between two founders. So I mean, founders don't have like you know any clause where there's a compete or a non-compete. So it could happen that you leave the company and you start something which is very similar, or maybe the same, right? Or you try to poach in the same customers. That's when the legal ramifications start to get into, right? So in those cases, the first thing is, what is your contract with your customer? Most of the customer contracts. So let's say, we are founders, and then I leave the company and I start poaching in our customers. So most of the time, the customer contracts would let them not do that. Right? So they would not be able to do that. And let's say if they do, then you have a legal claim. Then you have a claim where you can go to the consumer court or the civil court and then have this disputed out, right? The second part of the legal battle is, after a certain point of time, two co-founders, when they start making money, there's a certain amount of money which is, leveraged out to both the co-founders, right? And if, let's say, one of them is not getting that payment, right? So in that case, if they leave the company, they are in a position where they can make a legal case against the company and the other founders. So those are the things where conflict resolution becomes important, and most of this is settled out of court. Given the time it will take for the matter to be heard, and then all the facts to be presented, so it takes a longer time, not just in India, even outside, right? So most of these are like, does get settled out of court, but these are the places where some of the legal challenges do come
Interesting, very interesting. And then it becomes ugly. Then it's no longer about a customer, and other things are going on.
in. Yeah.
Right? That's a tragedy.
Yeah.
That's a real tragedy. Okay, so Ashutosh, considering the fact that, okay, different countries have different ways of approaching this. Now, some of the other things that let's talk about sales conflict. Okay,
Mm.
customers are not paying on time. When you approach them, they say we need more time, or they say you didn't deliver properly, and so many things can go wrong in Indian context. Okay,
Mm.
and if you're okay with sharing some of the experiences that you have had also anywhere,
Mm.
how does one take it? And look, legal recourse is dangerous because, in the sense that it can go to a very different loop, and then
Mm.
your energies are focused on other things. So, how do you handle these kind of situations? What are the best ways to do it? And yes, having the contracts, the NDAs, and the legal might is very critical,
Mm.
but you can't just trust and goodwill can only take you so far.
Yeah.
But
And
before the deal, what do you do? How do you go about this?
yeah, just before that, I'd also like to mention that in India, you can raise a GST complaint if you're
Hmm.
raising GST, and then if you have raised an invoice, and if
Hmm.
that invoice is not answered in 3 months, you can raise a GST complaint.
Okay.
So that gets resolved much better than your legal route,
Yes. Yes.
right? So
Okay.
India did have that very well stated, and we have. Use that once because we
Hmm.
knew that we were not going to go to that customer again, and we did get the money in like 2 months post our complaint, right?
Hmm.
But then that's where the challenge is that if you want to stay with the customer, what do you do if they're not paying, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge challenge. The simplest way to resolve it is, first is like the constant reminders, like you send them reminders. And this has happened to us very recently where we were in a project, and it was almost 7 months since we raised invoice and nothing was happening.
Hmm.
So initially we were trying to raise it to them and nothing was happening. So we reached out to their senior management, and then then also didn't happen. And then finally we said, we were in the steer committee call where some decisions were to be made about the project, and we said, boss, we have run out of money, and we have not been we've asked for these payments and they have not happened. So at this point, we can't support this project anymore. And it's a genuine thing, right? Because we told them we are an MSME. We are not like, a company with like tens and thousands of crores in our pocket. So this is where we are, and we have, run out of money. So that was at the 7th month. At the 8th month, we got 2 of our invoices cleared out. And then, at least the communication started back where we were able to resolve it. So the way we resolved it was we went higher up in the management as much as possible. And then even after that, when it was not heard, we said that we can't support because we can't, right? So
Yeah.
we are tying up resources who can go to other projects where they might get, money. So it doesn't really make sense.
Understood. So this is the thing. Be very careful at the beginning of it itself that protect yourself, whether it's
Yes.
legally or your service should be so good and your product should be so good that the customer has to pay you on time and whatever it is. Otherwise, everyone tries to run away from this payment on time or whatever it is. Isn't it, Ashutosh? Whether we like it or not,
Yes.
these are some genuinely we have to face up to these business challenges. It's all nice to say that people should be honest and ethical and etc etc. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way, and you better be ready to face up to these challenges.
Yeah, and I mean, just to be like fair to the businesses as well, it's not just that they don't want to pay. There's just like so many processes to follow. I'll,
Yes,
I'll
yes.
tell you, right. I mean, one time we had like an invoice where the sheet said item, quantity, price, and they rejected it because they
Huh,
wanted everything in one column.
huh,
So the cycle is I raise the invoice today. They
hmm,
look at it 15 days later. On the
huh,
16th day, they'll reject it. Then
huh,
on the 18th day, I'll get it. So it's
huh,
18 days gone, right?
huh,
Before I can correct it and then send it again. And then it's again like 1 month before they pay. So
huh.
essentially, what should have come in like 30 days is going to come in like 65 days,
Okay.
right? So it's just not that they don't want to pay. Sometimes there's like so many processes around, and especially when GST was coming, and then GST norms were changing every day. Literally all our payments were getting stuck. And again, now that uh, our COVID has happened, so then again we went through the same thing where the payments are getting stuck, right? But some of them are genuine, some of them are like nasty. But at the end of the day, you got to resolve it or put your hands up, right? It's so like you don't need to fight with them, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that you cut your own throat to support them. So
Yeah, yeah. Right, because it's not easy. This is not easy things to do.
right,
Okay.
right.
Now, okay, next question, right? Conflict resolutions. You got to be prepared for it. You got to be learning about it, correct?
Mhm,
So some resources or some way that like founders should spend a little bit more time, say the legal person or the CA person, because
mhm,
it can be the other way around also, right? Supposing as founders you are not complying,
mhm.
you can get some cases being put against you,
Yes, yeah,
and your reputation can be totally thrashed.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So what about that part of it also, Ashutosh? I would like you to throw some thoughts on that.
Sure. So first is always have a CA, right?
Okay.
Because and this I'm talking not just from a point of view of like doing your accounts and maintaining your accounts, right? GST and other things have a lot of rules. I'll tell you, like 2 years ago when this whole Nirav Modi case happened, right? There was this new rule where and all the entrepreneurs who have a company will agree with me is that you have to show your face while working, and there has to be a photo of that, and then your company name should be on a board and then outside of the gate, right? So you as an entrepreneur are not prepared for all these things, and this will happen, right? And so having a CA is very important. And also just one more time, last month it happened to us where we got like a legal notice or like a threat for a legal notice because they said you've not been paying your provident fund.
Hmm.
So then we were like, you call your CA, and they were like, no, we have paid. It's a routine check. We'll go and do it. So you
Okay.
can't be involved into doing all these things,
Hmm.
right? You need to have a like an accounts person, good accounting local team which is doing that, right? Don't do this online, right? You
Yeah.
need to have like one like a legal people who are doing this. Similarly, one HR person.
Hmm.
It may not be a first hire, but even if you are getting one person on like a good person on a freelance to get that HR done, it should be done, right? I mean, it's not something that should be kept for later on, right?
Okay.
And that's because the moment you hire your first employee, there's like a list of things that you'll have to give it to them. Office timings, dressing up, salary expectations, all those things. So it's important to have like one good human resource done, right? And if you have there's a website called Fiverr. I will put that link here in our chat, right? So it's Fiverr is a fantastic resource for overall, right? So Fiverr, you can get like designers, UX guys, UI guys, logo makers, and all that, right? So they also have like HR consulting, which we have used personally. Now we have our own in-house HR, but when we started out, so it was like I paid $15 an hour, and that lady made a very nice document for us, which detailed all the the employee benefits and everything for us.
Okay.
Right?
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
yeah, so this is a Fiverr is a very good resource in terms of like how to get freelance workers, but in especially for HR, it has been a very good help for us. So having that is important. And third is along with your CA, you need to have like one legal person. It could be part of your CA team. A lot of CA teams do involve one legal person, right? Because these legal queries come every now and then, right? I just got one message that I have not paid my GST 3B. 3 days before, I didn't even know what GST 3B is. Now, like, they said, yo, you've not filed it. So immediately, you call your HR guy and then your tax guy, and then, he calls some legal person. So having those two teams is important. It doesn't take a lot. Most of these tax services or CA firms, they charge about like 10K per month if they're not doing anything. Plus, that's their retainer, plus whatever service they're providing. So they'll take that. So, having that is very important.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, we can't use this excuse that I didn't know, so I'm not liable or whatever. No, it doesn't.
Yeah. No. The government of India will not listen to all this. No government will.
No government will.
Yeah.
Especially now, right? They all need revenue, and they say like, man, it's been around for so many years.
Yeah.
You better well comply.
So
Right?
I'll actually give you one example. So my company is also in US, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here. So in the first year when I started my company in 2016, I was not there. I was here, right? And that first year we were not making any money, right? So 1 year later, it just occurred to me because I had just come from US. I was paying my US taxes also. So it just occurred to me that what about my company tax? So then I went online and then I found a CA online, which is like it's called a Harvard Business Firm, right? So it's a Delaware-based firm. So I found them, and then most of the startup founders in Silicon Valley use them. So I went out to them, reached out to them, and it turned out I did owe government of US $200 for my taxes.
Okay.
Right? So if that had not happened, my company would have been shut without me knowing because I was not there. So anywhere you go, it's not just an Indian government thing, right? So anywhere you go, you need to have your tax guys ready, because that's one battle you can't win, right?
Yeah.
And then it's best to have somebody who understands this.
No, I think what you're saying makes so much of sense, Ashutosh, right? And look, it may be like people say, oh, I'm an innovator, I'm a founder, I'm a startup, why should I bother about this? You have to, because you don't expect to stay there forever, right? You want to move.
And that move will be so sudden, then you won't have time to find someone who will have, who would go through your 2 years of document and say, man, what did you do for 2 years, right? So it's best to start on day one, and then
Correct.
So on day one, HR accounts has to be set up properly.
Interesting. No, I think what you're saying is, I mean, we should not ignore such things, because that's high risk to do that.
Yes.
Perfect.
And these are like huge documents, right? I mean, if right now we have to do like the finances, right? So that bundle is this big, right? You have to submit like physical copies. I have to sign on like 104 pages every time, right? So I know the pain of that, right? So and they say that next year it will become even bigger based on your revenues. It will become even bigger, right? So if you have to do that on your own, be my guest, but I can tell you that you will not run your company then. Then you will be an accounting service,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So that's the thing.
No, I mean, I think, can we just quickly look at what
Yes.
Ganesh has said? No, if you see
Mhm.
that, Shitosh,
Mhm.
he did talk about it. They refused to pay, saying that you didn't, the services didn't match.
Yeah.
Then how do you handle it, right? So,
Yeah. So this does happen a lot, unfortunately, right? The only way to do this is raise the invoice properly, and have to have an agreement before you start, right? So there is definitely a SOW. So it's called statement of work. So your invoice should match the statement of work,
okay.
and if that is the case, then they should be paying. So the chain of command is, you reach out to them, you reach out to their seniors, you reach out to the higher management, and if that doesn't happen, then you go to GST
Hmm.
and you say that to the GST board, right? But just know that at the moment you go to the GST board, you've lost that customer.
Hmm.
But again, there's only so much you can do other, before cutting your own throat, right? So need to make that. But to this particular problem, right, that if someone says that your invoice is not matching the work done, so the statement of work is the most important. The statement of work will define whether the services offered and the invoice raised were according to the statement of work,
Hmm.
and get sign off
Yeah.
on your work, right?
Yes. Yes.
The sign off will prove that the work has been done properly.
Correct. Correct. I mean, no, that statement of work part that you're talking about,
Hmm.
that's now become a, you have to follow that very,
Yes.
very rigorously,
Yes.
right? I mean, because no, nowhere can you say that I couldn't deliver, I just missed one point. Now,
Yes.
Ganesh, just to let you know, you got to be super duper careful, because most companies follow the processes. It's not that they don't want to pay you or
Hmm.
they're trying to avoid paying you, but the system will not accept it. Okay,
Yes.
if 10 points were said to be done and you gave only 8 or 9, and that one point, because it has not been satisfactorily answered or whatever it is, and there's no exception rule being passed,
Hmm.
you can get into serious trouble. Not that they want to get into trouble, but that's how it is. So let's be
Yes.
careful about it, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Ashutosh,
And
it's already, sorry, yeah,
yeah,
continue.
I was saying that, and even on the 9 things that have been delivered, the
Hmm.
sign off is very important,
Yeah, the sign off,
right?
yes.
So that your statement of work, the points in your statement of work matches with the sign off. That means that it was delivered properly, right?
ठीक
If
है,
you
ठीक
don't
है.
get a sign off, then they will say that, oh, okay, it's not done,
Yeah,
right?
got it, got it. No, very, very beautifully illustrated, right? And see, and look, and today the world has changed, isn't it, Ashutosh? You
Mm.
can't, I mean, you can't say that, oh, I didn't know, I tried my best, I gave you 9 out of 10. It doesn't
Mm.
matter. It just doesn't
Right.
matter.
Yeah.
And then, and of course, how do you deal it if the person that you are dealing with has changed? It's very
Correct.
system and process driven rather than a people driven, relationship driven, whatever. So you be very,
Hmm.
very cautious.
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Ashutosh, it's almost 7 o'clock. All right. So I know
Oh
that
yeah.
this is too huge. This is too huge a topic to really,
Yes.
and we're trying to cover a lot of things, right? And you did share some resources about
Mm.
Fiverr and other things.
Mhm.
But what else? What about the mental makeup?
Mm.
What I mean by this is when you have a conflict, whichever way,
Mhm.
right? You have legal, you have CA, you have contracts, MOUs, whatever it is, correct? But
Mhm.
many times, you lose your cool, or
Yes.
or like, how do you handle this? How do you be very, very cautious, calm, negotiate, figure things out? What are the steps that one can take on that front? It could be as an employee, as a co-founder, or whatever it is, as a customer, whichever way, right? How do you what do you, the mental makeup or the mindset part of it?
I mean, so I'm generally a very angry person, is what I'm told, right? So so the way I handle it is I don't speak. I because for me, I mean, it's my shortcoming. I understand that, right? So if let's say there's a conflict, and then we've been talking about it. So I have a policy that if you answer immediately, you'd most likely say the wrong thing. It would not be that you'd say the right thing. Whether it's a conflict between co-founders or customers or employees, right? The best is to hear them out properly, listen to them, and then don't answer immediately. That's my policy, right? So and it works out for me, because then once I cool down, and then I'd reiterate on whatever has been said, and then I take it over, right? So find your shortcomings is what I'd say, right?
Hmm.
If your shortcoming is that you're not a good listener, then start writing things down. right? So if your shortcoming is that you're not good with memory, and then these things don't really help you, and you're not able to take that, then get somebody else with you who can do that.
Yeah.
Maybe the another co-founder, right? But understand that this is your shortcoming, and then that's the first thing to understand, that this is your shortcoming. The second thing to understand is that this conflict has to be resolved, right? And then you'll work around your way to resolve that conflict. Otherwise it will become very
Correct. Correct.
it'll go into a gutter hole.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. I think this really makes a lot of sense, a lot of inputs. And also, I think, Ashutosh, if you're dealing, say, with different countries, different states, you have to know the law of the land. You must take
Yes.
enough time out, consult with a lawyer, consult with the people, and educate yourself. So, how
Yes.
do you go about this? This is my last question to you, right? When you know, as with you, I know that you're an investor, you consult, you advise, you mentor, plus you run your own two very diverse kind of startups for the last few years.
Mhm.
So, and though you may have your advisors, you have all your stuff, but you and your maybe your core team, how do you guys educate yourself and stay abreast of the latest laws? Even though you have some people to supposedly to take care of it, but
Mhm.
as a founder, what are the things you got to be careful
Um, so the thing is that two things I always say is, one, know your customer,
about?
right? If you're getting into a different country or a different state for that matter, right? Your customer is that state government or the country, right? The rules of that country. Second is that your customer yourself, right? So knowing about those things is very important. So very recently we got a contract with Ford, and so for us it was 1 month understanding like how Ford's business works, like who their partners are, who they're working with, right? The second part was whether our software complies with the US standards, because Ford is an international company, they want to use it across. So the first question we asked them, and we set out a questionnaire for Ford, right? Which are the countries that we'll have to support?
Huh.
Because then the second thing for us to do was go back and then whether we read it ourselves or reach out to people and then understand the rules of those places. So we found out that we had to deploy in Ukraine, Singapore, and some places in Africa. So we had absolutely no idea how those countries work, right? So we reached out to the local people over there, and then we asked Ford only, so if they could help us, reach out to some of the people. So they helped us in Africa. So then we reached out to them, we reached out to the lawyers, and we understood this is our product, whether it will work. These are our patents. So then they told us, what will work, what will not work. And then Singapore especially was very strict around all those things. So we had to change few of our points, and then data access policies to do that. So it's very important to understand that. You're absolutely right. But to do that, any deal that we do, we have to understand the law of the land, which is like the country or the state, and then also like how that company works there, right? So for instance, if we are working with, let's say, Tata Steel, right? It's in Jamshedpur, it's in Jharkhand, right? So you know about Jharkhand and Jamshedpur. But Tata Steel also has businesses in like Europe, right? They help export steel somewhere, and then that steel goes to a lot of places. What if part of your business is supporting all that? That means that you need to know how your data access policies and data integrity policies affect those as well, right? So both of these are very important.
Correct. Impossible. Yeah. And I would also advise everyone, like go through all these startup India. There are a lot of wonderful, resources and about legal insights, doing business culture, about the tax laws, as Ashutosh has been talking about, of different countries, including India. It's all there, and it's good to know because you're doing business. Tomorrow you have to a lot of people take advantage of certain legal and whatever laws or whatever it is for their business, right? So you should know these things. Great, great. Ashutosh, I mean, 7:05, more than an hour now, and this is a series, so I'm sure that there's a lot of other insights that we are going to keep giving in other, sessions that we're doing. Any pointers, insights for the audience, to the founders, to the entrepreneurs, to the business owners? Okay, personal anecdotes also, something that could help them as they grow.
Sure. So I've had three personal conflicts, right?
Okay.
Not like personal conflicts, like three conflicts. One with a co-founder,
Mm.
two. I mean, I'm just clubbing them. Two with customers and
Yeah.
one personal of my own.
Okay.
And I tell you that the first one, which was with the co-founder, it did not go very well,
Okay.
and it was partially my own learnings and partially the stage at which the company was in, right? We were both very hard-headed on. He was from sales, I was from technology, so we were both very hard-headed on the direction of the company, where it should go. We parted ways, nothing legal, right? So we parted ways, and then not in the best of the ways, right? And the lesson there I learned was that it could have gone very badly,
Hmm.
right? And it probably didn't, because we both chose to honor each other as founders, and then we we stopped there, and then we left, right?
Okay.
So even though we were both hot-headed in saying that, but at least in terms of like how we spoke to each other was docile, and we honored that as entrepreneurs, this can happen, and then we moved on, right? So not the best resolution, but just that smallest thing, that you're able to understand that the person in front of you is also a human being that you're talking to. It goes a long way,
Long
right?
way. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
And
So
it's a small world, isn't it, Ashutosh?
yes, yes,
You got to keep, a goodwill relationship. But yeah, it should not be in such a way that you become a doormat and you lose money and you lose your reputation. You got to be
yes,
careful.
yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Beautiful.
And,
Beautiful.
and then when it happened with the customers, one I've shared before, right? So that
Hmm.
we reached out to different management, and then
Hmm. Hmm.
so but there are two things to consider. One is, a you have to always be very good in terms of like how you speak to the customer, because you're building a relationship there, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But at some point you have to realize that, one, is this relationship good enough for me? Because you're putting in your money, you're putting in your time for this one customer, where you could have gone to like five other customers, right? You put all your resources here, and then they could have gone and worked somewhere else, right? Second is, do you want now, like now that it has stretched so much, do you still want to do business with that person, right? So in the first case, for us, the answer was yes, and that's why we told them genuinely that this is where we are, can you help us out? And they did, right? If they had not helped us out at that point, we would have left, right?
Yeah.
And but not breaking the relationship, we would have
Hmm.
left, not taking any legal action, nothing, so we would have left, right?
Hmm.
But in the second case, we knew that we don't want to do relationship with them, we don't want to continue with them, so we went with the GST route, and then we made sure that we are
Hmm.
getting at least some money back.
Awesome. Awesome.
So no matter how good you are, in terms of like how you resolve the conflict, at the end of the day, you have to, run the business, and you have to do the right things for your business. So if amicably it can be done, you make that call and then get that
Hmm.
out.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Very nicely put, Ashutosh, as always. And thank you for all these inputs and insights. We will have to call it a day now, though there are so much other thoughts that we could come out with. And anything else that you want to share on our various WhatsApp groups and everything, let's keep doing that. And of course, a warm thank you to the Vidphone team, Jagat, Akhil, for setting this up. And thank you, Ashutosh. Let's stay in touch, my friend. And of course, lots of other sessions that we want to do.
Yes,
And I'm sure that even in Q, where you are the technical and innovation director, the things are going well for you, and all your startups are doing well, plus your own companies also. Okay,
thank you, sir. Thank you.
keep growing, keep growing. That's what matters, my friend.
Thank
And
you.
of
Thank
course,
you.
my goodwill support, whatever you need, is always there. And that goes without
And
saying.
yeah, thank you so much. And I'd just like to conclude with first of all, thanking out Jagat. He's doing this fantastic thing, and getting this opportunity to talk to everyone.
Huh, huh.
That's phenomenal. Vijetha sir, you are always there for everyone, and always I'm happy to talk to you about these things. Right? They are the questions which are always nice, and then it's on point, on spot, right?
Yes, yes.
A lot of people don't realize that when you ask this question, that but how about sharing the resources, how important that is, right?
Yeah.
We can go ahead and then find those resources ourselves, right? But it's the experiences, right? So we share those experiences in those groups, and that's very important, right?
Hmm.
And we'll be continuing this series. I think the next one most likely will be about teams, like how team structure and how team size is, ESOPs, employees, how do we handle that? So that's going to be, a fun one, because as co-founders and as founders, how do we, find the right team at
Yeah.
various stages of the company, right?
Oh
So that's
yes. Oh
important, right?
yes.
So we'll be
Absolutely.
talking about that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. We look forward to that. And anything else, Shitosh, that you'd like to say? I know I always ask this question, but just in case there was something last minute that you want to say.
No, I think you covered everything, and I'll be sharing more resources.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's
This
do
is
that.
one
Let's do
area
that.
where I can share more
Perfect.
resources,
Perfect.
so I'll share
Perfect.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and to just let people know, through Vidphone and Type Bangalore, and of course with the help of Ashutosh, we have been running a lot of WhatsApp groups, etc., etc.
Yeah.
A lot of resources are being shared, a lot of learnings are there, offline, online, and readings and research reports, etc. We are doing this League of Extraordinary Startups. We are doing the Startup Sunday also tomorrow morning,
Mhm.
and of course the timing differs, but we do this, and also with Ashutosh,
Mhm.
these episodes that we have been doing, focusing on learning which startups need. It could be
Yes.
on sales, it could be on technology, it could be your journey, and of course today we talked about conflict resolution and everything about legal. So
Mhm.
thank you everyone, and a warm thank you and gratitude once again to you, Ashutosh. Always a delight.
Thank you, sir. All
Take
right.
care.
Good
Enjoy your
night.
Sunday, guys, and Saturday
Yeah,
evening as
enjoy
well.
your
Bye bye.
weekend. Yes. Yeah.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye bye.